Good morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you may be, whatever time it is. So we're glad to have you here today. My name's Jane Johnson. I'm the Associate Director at DO-Touch.NET. Thank you for joining us. Before we begin, let's take a moment for the housekeeping rules of the webinar. Those rules are, if you have technical issues during the webinar, please send a message in the chat. If you have questions or comments during the presentation, please feel free to type them into the chat, and you can address each other's questions and comments there as well. At certain points in the presentation, we'll have time for discussion and questions. And so if you would like to, instead of typing your question or comment, if you'd like to make it in person, feel free to raise your hand in Zoom. You can do that. If you go to the bottom, you can, there's a raise your hand thing under the reactions, and we will unmute your microphone so that you can speak. We ask you to briefly introduce yourself. Please feel free to turn on your camera if you would like. When contributing to the discussion, please limit microphone time to 3 minutes to allow time for everyone who wants to participate in the discussion. Please keep in mind that this webinar is being recorded and will be placed on the public DO-Touch.NET YouTube channel. Today's webinar is an update on our DO-Touch.NET activities and plans. And so here's our agenda. We're going to talk about our upcoming annual meeting, which we're very excited about. And then we'll have an update on the post-COVID and OMT study, a brief update on the patient registry for OMT, or PROMT, and then an update about what's going on with the International Consortium on Manual Therapies. So let's start with the annual meeting. Hopefully you all saw in your email that registration is now open for our 10th annual meeting. Be held morning of March 15th in Colorado Springs and on Zoom. So as we did last year, as you can see in this photo from last year's annual meeting, we will have both ways to access the annual meeting available. So here's what's on the agenda for our annual meeting this year. It's titled, What's Next? Card Studies, OMT Techniques, and You. So for those of you that don't know what card studies are, guess what? We're going to talk about that. And Jack Westfall is joining us today. And he is a international expert on card studies and will be helping us to learn about this. We're very excited about the prospect of conducting card studies within DO-Touch.NET as a simple way to answer important questions. So research questions. And so Jack will be sharing more about card studies at our annual meeting. We will then break up into small groups and develop and review card study ideas. So ideas for DO-Touch.NET card studies that we can conduct in the future. Then following that, we will have some discussion from Rebecca Giusti on nomenclature for OMT techniques. Rebecca is part of a work group from the OIA, who has been working with the WHO to define nomenclature for osteopathic manipulation. So, Brian, do you have anything to add to that?
No, that was perfect, Jane. Thank you.
In that case, I'll move on. Also, in conjunction with the AAO convocation, as we have our annual meeting in conjunction with the AAO convocation, we will also be holding a residency research enrichment program that we've titled Playing with Card Studies. This is a program for resident physicians and residency directors. So if you know of any residents or residency directors who are going to be at the AAO convocation, and this will be the Tuesday evening before Convo starts, we will once again be working on learning about card studies and developing card studies. In this focus is, residents have to do research. And so this is introducing them to the idea of card studies, which may be an easier way for them to conduct a research study during their residency. So that's just a little bit about that. In relation to card studies, so our next, so I think February and March we're going to call card study months. For our Let's Talk About OMM Research educational webinar in February, we will be having the webinar from Jack Westfall again. And that's what the heck's a card study and what does it mean to me? So that will be on February 10th. So on the second Friday in February rather than the third Friday. So put that on your calendar and plan to join us for that webinar as well. Okay. So what else is DO-Touch.NET doing at the AAO Convo? We'll have our usual exhibitor booth. It's number 301. So be sure to stop by to say hi and pick up your DO-Touch.NET swag. We've got some new things this year. So we hope you'll come see us, not only for the swag, but come see us. Our March, Let's Talk About OMM Research Journal Club actually falls during Convo. And so we're working on some plans for that. So watch your email and DO-Touch.NET social media for more information about that. We are planning on holding an executive committee meeting at some point during Convo. We're working on getting that scheduled. And then there will be some informational meetings about the post-COVID syndrome and OMT research study. So do we have any questions about any of that, or what's happening with the annual meeting or happening during Convo?
Will this annual meeting at all be virtual for those who
Yes, it's both on in-person and virtual. So,
Right.
so if you go ahead and register, it'll ask you, will you be there in person or virtually? Unfortunately, for those joining us virtually, we will not be able to provide breakfast. But for those who are on site, it includes breakfast. So, sorry. Any other questions?
So the time for that is based off of Mountain Standard Time, and that will begin 8 a.m. on that Wednesday, March 15th, and go until 12 noon Mountain Standard Time. So you can work out how that fits within your time zones.
And I think we'll have breakfast starting at 7:30. So,
yeah.
And registration or check-in. Anything else?
Yes, just in regards to Jane's just comment. So if you are wanting to have breakfast, you need to pre-register. Okay, that is the primary purpose of that. And this is part of the value of being a DO-Touch.NET member. That is, there are advantages, cost advantages in regards to the meal and so forth for the meeting. There are CME credits offered for this meeting as well, be a total of 4 CME credits for those that makes a difference. And so please pre-register, especially if you're going to be there in person. So we have everything we need all set up to make your experience excellent.
Even if you're not going to be there in person, please pre-register so we can get you the Zoom link and ahead of time and things like that. Okay. All right. So, not seeing any more questions, and thank you for bringing up about the CME. I was going to bring that up and I completely forgot, Brian. That's why we're a team here.
That's right. That's right.
Okay, so the next item on our agenda is an update about the post-COVID and OMT study.
All right. Well, thanks, Jane. Yasser Rehman, Dr. Yasser Rehman, who's at McMaster University right now, finishing up his PhD in epidemiology, has been working with me for over probably a year and a half now in putting together a research design to allow us to see the influence of manipulative medicine on post-COVID syndrome. For those that remember, we had tried to monitor the people within the network who were caring for patients with acute COVID, but we had very limited numbers being able to provide that care. And so we are in the process of completing a manuscript on the surveys that we had done during that time, and we learned, but we weren't able to really generate any meaningful outcome data in regards to OMT's influence in the acute COVID situation. So when it became clear that there were major sequelae from that acute infection, and a lot of that has to deal with pain, shortness of breath, central nervous system symptomatology, which are conditions or symptoms that are commonly treated with manipulative medicine, that we just then focused our efforts in putting together a study looking at post-COVID syndrome. We are all, because we all lived through it, understand the impact of COVID-19. It was a devastating global catastrophe in regards to how we managed it and the effects on the human population. You go to the next slide. So when we look at post-COVID syndrome, the most recent literature that we've been able to identify has kind of settled into about up to 43% of the general population, those who had acute COVID symptoms, or in fact, who tested positive for COVID, that after 4 to 12 weeks that they are continuing to have some symptoms that have been associated to the SARS-CoV-2 virus. And what we have also found that those that were more seriously affected by the infection, those who are hospitalized, particularly those who were intubated and admitted to intensive care units, that the persisting symptoms are far more common. Over half of these people have persisting symptoms. Next slide. And so that's underlying our post-COVID syndrome and OMM study. So the research question that we have is, how does manual medicine as performed by osteopathic clinicians impact people's lingering symptoms and physical functioning after being infected by the SARS-CoV-2 virus? And based off of the resources that we have available at the center here in Kirksville, we are unable to provide resources for the tools to be placed in any language beyond English. And it is because of all the issues associated with privacy along patients' health information and all the varying laws across the world along that line. We do not have the infrastructure to be able to perform this study outside of the United States. Now, that doesn't mean that we would not be supportive of those able to help to facilitate translational issues or the legal requirements to be able to do a study in an area outside of the United States. In our previous studies within DO-Touch.NET, we have had other organizations such as the VOD in Germany play pivotal roles in helping to deal with the issues of translation and legal compliance for those studies. And so if by chance there would be people able and interested in doing facilitating that, we're certainly open to providing the tools and resources that we've been able to generate for this particular research study. Next slide. So this is a prospective longitudinal cohort observational study, and we are identifying this as a pilot and feasibility study because this is such a new condition, and there's very little literature about it. We are kind of taking the first steps. That gives us a pilot designation. And anytime we create a new study design, the issue of whether or not it is feasible for us as a network and for our patients to successfully manage it is always an issue. And this is certainly a common early step that NIH, often the National Institutes of Health here in the United States, use to help make sure that the study is ready for greater investment in order to carry it out. So part of our purpose is to generate measures looking at feasibility as well as looking at the specific issues associated with manipulative medicine and the symptoms associated with long COVID. So what we've done thus far is that we've begun a webinar to inform DO-Touch.NET members about this study. We have had 2 of them, and from that we begun to recruit physicians and clinic sites who are interested in participating in this study. We have 8 clinicians that have signed up and are going to the next phase of investigation, where they basically take on a role of a enrolling patient, so they can kind of see how this study design is going to impact their patients, so that they can clearly inform the patient how simple and convenient and easy this study is for them to participate in, to help give any further refinement before we do a formal launch of the study, and then are unable to make any adjustments to our tools or our protocols. We're going to be continuing to do these recruitment programs over the next several months. We hope to do them weekly, and we have them scheduled, and we will be sending out announcements for this in the beginning of this week, if not today. That next Thursday at noon Central Standard Time, we will have a webinar open for DO-Touch.NET members to learn about the study. And then the following Wednesday at 4 p.m. Central Standard Time, we would be having another program. As Jane mentioned earlier, we are going to have programming at the convocation for those that are there on site, and further updates in regards to the progress made between now and then. Are there any questions about this study that I can answer?
I have one. Oh, I guess I jumped in, excuse me. With the 2 meetings you mentioned, next Thursday and the following Wednesday, are those the same meetings? So just 2 opportunities to get involved and get in there?
Yes, our overall training approach is in a single webinar that will give you a good overview about the study design, the outcome measures, the impact of the study on a clinic or practice, what would be the expectations to a practice. And we hope that that will give you a good enough idea whether this is going to work, whether you have interest in it. If you do, then we will then log you in to the protocol so that you can actually experience it through, just a trial. If that goes well, then we will actually do individual clinic training. So the front office staff, any other physicians that may be part of the clinic, to understand their roles, to manage this, and then we will then provide the materials and the support to get that clinic site up and running. Our goal is that a clinician would be able to enroll 5 COVID patients. That is our hope. That doesn't mean that if you only can get 1, that we wouldn't be happy to have it. We certainly would be. But our hope would be perhaps 5. And if a clinic site has, 10 clinicians, we're still only hoping for 5. All right. So we're looking at having up to, near 30 clinics involved. We have a goal of 130 patients with COVID enroll in this study. This is expecting a certain level of dropout and different other factors to be able to make sure that our numbers are going to be appropriate for our analyses that we're doing. Right now, as far as the duration of the study, we're in the process of getting additional resources to support this study. So we're putting in a grant as we speak that will help fund money for patient reimbursement for their time for completing surveys. There's an additional grant that I am looking that we're going to be applying for to get additional resources to provide some support for clinics for the time that they are putting forth to generate the data that we need. And then I will also be using some aspects of my endowment to also support this study. So at this moment, that's kind of where we stand. So we don't have really an end date. There's no, this all has to be done in the next year. We do know when a certain one grant would come through that it would limit us to an 18-month period of time. We probably won't know for, another 6 to 8 months before that is available. And so, easily we're talking about 2.5 years to run this study, and that hopefully will give us ample time to get the numbers that we are wanting. Hallie?
Hi all. Hallie Robbins, currently in New York as well as in Utah. Rehab and physical medicine, as well as osteopathic manipulation and addiction medicine. My interest in this study is keen and very high, so please include me in it. What I'd like to specify, though, is the need for nomenclature specificity. Long COVID is not the same as post-COVID, is not the same as recurrent COVID, and the current terminology is PASC, standing for post-acute sequelae of COVID, which is the literature guideline for language. If we're going to be clear about language anyplace else, let this be from the start of our studies in this as well. It is very different populations for recurrent COVID and long COVID sequelae with post-COVID, as well as long COVID. The other thing that I'd like to suggest is that we need to include doctors who have experienced or been affected directly by COVID, whose practices have been impacted. And we need to make sure that we as a collegial profession look out for the colleagues who have dealt with this or are safeguarding in clinics and taking precautions about how to take care of patients with it, as well as how to handle it themselves for their own needs. Sorry for the phone, I don't need to answer it. So thanks for your time, but you get the idea. There are lots of different ways to apply the meaning of the study. The DOs in the rehab community, as well as the rehab community as well, is centrally involved with COVID and its sequelae, because it is the parallel by demographics as well as subtypes of post-polio. There is no long polio. There's post-polio that developed 10 to 15 years after, and we don't have any equivalent understanding of the new novel coronavirus for what will happen 10 or 15 or longer, including in the children and adolescents, as well as the asymptomatic, who were the equivalent of grip type 1 of the 3 types of wild polio. So we need to make sure, thanks G, that we are always mindful of post-polio and its parallels for the people who are paralyzed, iron lung, and ventilators, and all the other sequelae that were large and small in their impact. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Hallie. Yeah, certainly we have only begun to know the consequences of COVID-19. And that's part of the reason why it's been so important that as a network, we have been trying to really be on the cutting edge of the work that we need to be doing as osteopathic physicians, osteopathic clinicians who, who are working with patients with this type of issue. So thank you. Any other questions? Okay. All right, Jane, back to you, I think.
All right. So let me start up the share again. So the next topic, and this will be a brief update, is about the patient registry for OMT. So as many of you may remember, we have the project formerly known as OSPRY, and we had some trademark, wordmark issues with that. And thanks to G, they came up with a new acronym for the project, and it's PROMT. So it's the Patient Registry for OMT. The general update about that is that we've had several people review what the questionnaires and how they might be perceived and how easy or not easy they were to use, and have received several good points of feedback about that. And so our current plan is to work on updating, making the questionnaires easier for patients to deal with. There have also been some new features in REDCap. REDCap is the data collection software that we're using for the patient registry. And there have been some additional features added to REDCap recently that will make the patient registry function much more easily for patients. And so that's a project that will take a couple months to redo that project to get it into better shape. So that's where we are on the patient registry, now known as PROMT. So any questions on that?
All
right. Back to you, Brian.
All right. So for those who have been with us over the last couple of years, you have been hearing about the International Consortium on Manual Therapies. This is an initiative spearheaded by the A.T. Still Research Institute as a vision to advance the field of manual therapies in a collaborative manner. Inaugural conference was held last May, and since then, in fact, it was a little bit before that conference, the NIH, who had been working within the National Center for Complementary and Alternative and Complementary and Integrative Health, they had been having a variety of work groups, which ended up developing a funded mechanism to continue to build the infrastructure for research in this field. And from that, they funded 3 different groups, and the primary institution leading this is Duke University. And with their primary collaborator at the University of Alabama, they have developed ForceNet. So you can go online either to Duke University and then put in ForceNet, or just put in your search engine ForceNet, and it will bring you to this newly forming infrastructure. Dr. Chad Cook, who's a PT PhD at Duke University, and Bill Reed, a PhD DC at University of Alabama are leading this, and they have released a call for, or proposals for abstracts for grants that will be given through this mechanism. So I think it would be really good for people to be aware of that for your own, if you are part of an institution, or if you become aware of this and think of ideas of how DO-Touch.NET may be able to participate in some type of research that could be funded through this mechanism. This NIH-funded organization has received a special issue to look at the cutting issues associated with manual therapies and things that are particularly inhibiting the science in this field. And as a result, we at the ICMT, underneath the ATSRI, the institute here, have been given a place within a special edition journal looking at nomenclature, and Hallie had brought that up as an example in today's discussion. We know that our ability to communicate between fields of manual therapies is filled with a lot of landmines, ambiguity, eponyms, you name it, it exists within individual professions as well as between professions. So we're in the process of putting together a manuscript on that front. And this group has also decided that in this upcoming year, probably one of the most influential and fun aspects of that inaugural conference was our poster presentation. We had set aside a certain amount of time, and it was easily probably half as long as it should have been, based off of the level of interaction between everyone participating in what would be considered a typical, poster hall in presentation, but it's all done virtually online within the GatherTown format that G. Franklin has masterfully generated now for several venues for us to support virtual research programs. So that is going to be happening sometime this fall. We will keep you informed of it. We would, whether you can be a poster presenter or somebody that is just interested in learning what is the cutting edge research within this field, it is going to be a great opportunity to learn way more than what you thought was going on in the scientific field of manual therapies. So, so that's the update regarding the ICMT. Are there any questions in regards to that? Okay, then we are now at a time to go just to open forum for any questions or suggestions that anybody would like to present. I think G has to get the song from Jeopardy for moments like this. So I will make one more comment. I want to just introduce a little more closely Jack Westfall. Jack has a kind of a similar tie to President Kennedy in regards to how they choose which names they use to call themselves. Dr. Westfall is a family medicine specialist with a master's degree. Now that's in public health, I believe, right? He was at the University of Colorado, which was probably the premier institution in developing practice-based research networks in the United States. Dr. Green, who was one of their early mentors, had been an advisor to the A.T. Still Research Institute. Really, the PBRN, which that model began in Europe, was brought over by family medicine because of the need of being able to focus on real patient needs, real patient issues, in the complexity of patients' conditions in the real world. And by inherently, it is very osteopathic. The PBRN model, that is why we generated that within the Institute. And it's something that Dr. Westphal really takes to heart. He comes actually from a long line of osteopathic physicians, all the way back to Dr. Still, which I will wait for him to give that lineage at one of his future presentations. He understands osteopathic medicine. He understands manipulative medicine. He has family members that are currently DOs as well. And he has a tremendous amount of experience of what makes successful research. And in practice-based research networks and in the osteopathic profession in general, I can guarantee you from my experience, what makes good and successful research is that it is straightforward, it is simple, and it can be done quickly. And that is what the CARD study model, which is now taken from what would be on a paper to actually into the computer world, into something that we can disseminate very quickly and be able to be used very rapidly. So his programming is going to give us the background information we need at the webinar coming up, and at the annual meeting, he's going to give us the nuts and bolts, and he's going to walk us through an experiential process that we will then build upon as we continue our research into the future to generate, once again, very quickly, important information that we can disseminate as a result very quickly. Unfortunately, right now, DO-Touch.NET has been in the quagmire of much more complicated research designs, developing a registry for longitudinal research. I mean, that is so needed, but it is something that's also so complicated. Dr. Westphal is delivering to us an important part of what will become a routine aspect of our portfolio. So Jack, we really appreciate you joining our team for this purpose. I hope it's going to lead to ongoing work with you. And if you would like to just make any comments, certainly feel free.
Thanks, Brian. This is Jack Westphal. I'm a family doctor, and I'm so excited to join this team. I've known Brian for a couple of decades. We've been collaborating. I'm a medical doctor, an allopathic doctor, but I have deep osteopathic roots. My great grandfather was with Andrew Still at A.T. Still University in 1898, and I have some very fun pictures and some historical stuff that I'll be sharing in the future. But my roommate, best friend in college, went to Kirksville, and my niece went to Kirksville to A.T. Still University. So I have my family doctor growing up in rural Colorado was an osteopath. So I have a strong affinity for osteopathic physicians and the work that you all do. I'm not an osteopath, but I want to learn more about what you all do. And I've had the good fortune of being able to do practice-based research for the last 25 years. And I'm excited to join this team to do a little bit in your practices. And I think the words were rapid and research. And Amy said, I can't believe those are in the same sentence. And, it's pretty quick. Card studies are low burden and generalizable. That's one of the really cool things. And we'll talk more about this next month and then in March as well. So I thank you for introducing me, Brian. It's been fun to get, I'd worked with Brian years ago, and then our paths had diverged, and now it's convergence again. So it's been fun to get to know Brian G and reacquainted with Jane over the last 6 months. I look forward to meeting some of you and working with you.
Okay, Hallie, you raise your hand? Or no, just okay. Okay, I turn the microphone over to Jane to take us home.
Very good. All right. Well, I'll just close with a reminder about our next Let's Talk About OMM Research. It's an educational webinar. As we've been talking about, it's about card studies, and we're very excited. It's on February 10th, same time, but the second Friday in February, not the third Friday. So please put that on your calendar, and you'll be receiving information to register for that webinar early next week. So we are feeling a little bit missing Sarah Amini-Rod, our PBRN coordinator. But just to let you know, we are interviewing. We've had several interviews this week, and we hope to have a new PBRN coordinator on board in the not too distant future. So yeah, please. So
as I like to say, I'll cross everything but my eyes.
I like that. Thank you very much. We'll take that. So thank you all for joining us. We are grateful for you all. We're grateful for all of our members who contribute so much to, this is our practice-based research network, all of us. And we're grateful to work with you to help better the evidence base for osteopathic manipulative medicine. And so register for the annual meeting. If you know any residents or residency directors who are going to be at Convo, let them know about the resident research enrichment program. And we'll see you at the next Let's Talk About OMM Research. Thanks.